Well. Welcome into another episode of Two Guys, One Pod. And this is the team preview edition. Today, we're going to be going over the Indianapolis Colts, talking about one of the most fascinating offenses in all of fantasy football. So, because we dug into the Shane Steichen offensive DNA, we went through the historical projection, the historical usage patterns formation-wise. And I think that what we came away with was that this offense is being projected closer to its floor than its ceiling. So they were top 5 in passing yards, top 3 in rushing yards, first in rushing touchdowns, and now they enter into 2026 with 147 vacated targets. So, Addison, are fantasy managers underestimating the Indianapolis Colts in the year of our Lord 2026?
Well, I mean, of course they are. Anthony Richardson's on the Colts. Getting that first A-Rich one in about 30 seconds into the video. I know that's going to take you off. But the identity of this offense is pretty simple. They're a run-first offense built around the running back, and Shane Steichen likes it that way. That is the way that he prefers to construct an offense, and it works with Daniel Jones in that context. Through the first 10 weeks of 2025, and that's what we really need to focus on, because after Daniel Jones ruptured his Achilles there, and Riley Leonard was in, you can't really take those weeks at anything less than a discount. Through 10 weeks, they were at 266 passing yards. That's fourth. 145 rushing yards. That's third. 15 passing TDs. That's 16th. And 22 rushing TDs. First, number 1 in the NFL. And that was already one of the NFL's most productive offenses. And they lose 147 targets. So, all the assets on the Colts are theoretically undervalued.
So, unlike some teams, we have a predictive tendency with Shane Steichen and the way he funnels volume. The stars will get fed. That's what basically everything that we've told you to this point is alluding to the stars getting fed, whether it was Keenan Allen, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, now Jonathan Taylor, Tyler Warren, and Alec Pierce. Shane Steichen doesn't spread the ball around. He concentrates the touches. So, let's get into the formation, the historical data with the formation usage. 2020 with the Chargers, 70%, 11 personnel, 13%, 12 personnel. 2021 with the Eagles, 65%, 11 personnel, 12 personnel at 24%. 2022 with the Eagles, 71%, 11 personnel. What I'm alluding to here is that there's going to be a lot of 11 and 12 personnel for the Colts in 2026. Our projection has it at 64%, 11 personnel, 21%, 12 personnel, and 13 personnel at a 6% rate. Sorry. There was a lot of percentages, a lot of numbers. I got really excited and I turned into JoJo the Idiot Circus Boy, okay?
No, you did great. A lot of numbers there. And the biggest takeaway that we get from that are the Colts are getting heavier over the last 2 seasons. Haven't we all? They became one of the league's most heavy 12 personnel offenses. And the reason for that is the one and only Tyler Warren. The projections are suggesting a return towards 3 wide receiver sets. But when it comes down to it, they just got rid of Michael Pittman and Adonai Mitchell. So they might stay heavy, and the reality is 13 personnel suited them well.
So we're looking at a 65% 11 personnel usage, which means concentrated targets for Alec Pierce and Josh Downs. Those are 2 separate people. They're not one person that I just conflated into one. I promise you. But also Tyler Warren in 11 personnel. This is going to be aggressive. And so I think you guys are going to look forward to what we have to say about that. What it does mean is that there's probably less targets for the secondary options, but we already told you this is a concentrated volume offense in terms of pass catching. So why don't you lead us through what makes this offense so interesting here?
Yeah. The thing that makes it so interesting is all of those vacated targets. And Mike Clay's projections already assume that Pierce and Downs get some of that volume. But I think that Warren gets a bigger role than people realize because Shane Steichen has been trying to hit those heavier personnels. And to this point, he's been dealing with guys like Will Mallory, Mo Alley Cox, Kyle Granson, and now he finally has a proper alpha tight end. We got to see what that looks like for 10 weeks of last season, and it was immaculate.
In terms of the vacated targets, we're looking at 15 more targets for Tyler Warren from his 112 to 127, 30 more for Alec Pierce, the A-Dot King, going from 84 to 114. Josh Downs getting over 100 targets, which could be, we'll talk about what that could mean in a second. And then Jonathan Taylor getting to 65 targets. So 55 to 65 targets. At one point going into 2025, he only caught 18 passes. This past year, I believe he caught 46. So we're getting back to the somewhat 3-down utility. If we could just get like Joe Mixon usage in the pass game to add to what he does on the ground, we could be looking at an RB1 overall finish. But let's move on to the fantasy relevant players here. And we haven't really talked about, we've talked about what Daniel Jones meant for the offense as a whole, but his price point makes him one of the better values in best ball and dynasty. Dynasty, quarterback 24 off the board, pick 94 in a super flex league. And in best ball, he's in the 12th round. Now we're talking about a guy who was on pace for career highs across the board, 3,100 yards, 19 touchdowns in 13 games. But if you concentrated to the first 10 games before he had the weird shin injury, he was playing like a league MVP candidate. So I'm confused by the Mike Clay projection on this. Right now, it's 3,700 yards and 20 touchdowns. That doesn't feel right, does it?
No. I mean, I feel like it has to consider some regression in terms of playing time. I can't imagine that he's taking it for 17 games, because if you take his pace in 2025 over 17 games, you're over 4,000 passing yards and you're at roughly 25 touchdowns. Like, I think this is accounting for some amount of time that A-Rich or Riley Leonard are going to come in there early in the season, but Daniel Jones has already been participating at OTAs. He could be back week 1.
You're right. I mean, he got cleared to do 7-on-7 this week. So this is an offense that ranked 4th in passing yards prior to his injury. And 20 touchdowns feels like a floor projection totally. So maybe Mike Clay, maybe the guys over at ESPN feel like that this offense was just fool's gold and that Daniel Jones is going to turn into a pumpkin and ruin our good time. But, I mean, we all know Jonathan Taylor is the straw that stirs the drink. He's the engine that powers this either muscle car or a minivan. I don't know which one it is. And his price is really interesting because he's currently the RB7 in Dynasty. Pick 32 off the board. And in best ball, he's the is this right? The 106?
Yeah, man. Hey, Scott took him over CMC this past week.
Whew. I mean, in terms of safety and utility, I mean, Jonathan Brooks, ew, no, never. Not even if there's a fire. Jonathan Taylor is one of the safest along those lines. And he was on a historic pace, like 25 points a game for the first 10 weeks. So that's really interesting. So here's some of the projections. So 2025, this was 323 carries, 1,585 yards, and 18 touchdowns. And we're projecting him now. Mike Clay's projecting him now, 327 carries, 1,500 yards, and 12 total touchdowns. And how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Like, I think if anything, it's a bit of an understatement, but 1,512 still gets the job done. The projection is simply baking in a little bit of touchdown regression, but he is still only working with DJ Giddens and now Seth McGowan. And given, I thought Seth McGowan looked okay at Kentucky, but even at the Senior Bowl, McGowan was on and off. He didn't get drafted highly. In fact, he was undrafted. Signs with the Colts, and DJ Giddens didn't take a ton of work last year, so the projection should stay about the same for Jonathan Taylor.
Maybe. But this is an offense that led the NFL in rushing touchdowns. And you just said that there's no one to – basically what I heard when you were saying that, like, I didn't go full Charlie Brown where everything was just kind of like, wah, 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 wah. But what I did hear was that there's no one to threaten Jonathan Taylor's production. And this is an offense that led the NFL in rushing touchdowns. So, ipso facto, Jonathan Taylor, who's a lead around the goal line, could destroy this 12 touchdown projection and be in conversation for the running back one overall. Do you find any faults in my argument there?
I don't find any faults, but you're dealing with an offense with a potentially injured QB. That's the biggest fear I have, and we did see the Colts fall off pretty heavily the second that Daniel Jones went down. But a player that I don't think will have any fall off no matter what the situation is Tyler Warren. How are we feeling about him?
All right. So he's priced at the Dynasty tight end 4. So we've got we've got the sweet spot in tight end premium of a young player who flashed and was on pace for a historic rookie season, going off the board around pick 40, best ball, almost the 7th round. Now, I know historically we're talking about the tight end dead zone in that range, but I don't care. I think that if you're constructing a Colt stack, this is almost, outside of Jonathan Taylor, this is the most important piece to a Colt stack, in my opinion. And we'll talk about Alec Pierce and some other stuff later, because I mean, Alec Pierce is like the perfect best ball player. But to stay on task here, 2025 for Tyler Warren, 112 targets, 76 receptions, 817 yards, 4 touchdowns receiving, and 1 touchdown rushing. So through week 10, we were getting some elite target volume for a rookie tight end. 6.7 targets a game, 61.7 receiving yards a game. And I just don't think that because of how the season finished is what I'll say. I don't think people realize what kind of pace Tyler Warren was on before the Daniel Jones injury and this offense completely tanked.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that blows my mind about that is the dichotomy that you see between him and Colston Loveland. The second that he started falling off, Colston Loveland started taking off, and people essentially swapped them in their ranks from Dynasty tight end 3 to tight end 4. And, people think of him as a rookie tight end that had inconsistency because at the end of your fantasy season, he really didn't help you win a ship. But the Colts clearly don't. They treat him as their favorite receiving weapon, and they just shipped out Michael Pittman, suggesting that maybe they want to get him even more involved. They didn't bring in competition. You're still dealing with Will Mallory and Mo Alley Cox. And if we know anything about Mo Alley Cox, it's that we're going to see less Alley Cox on the field.
Alley Cox is crazy, especially without like the bouncing ball and the subtitles here. So it'll be interesting to see what we do in post there. But historically, we've never seen a Shane Steichen tight end get utilized this way. Tyler Warren broke the mold. And if he gets 20 of the 111 vacated Michael Pittman targets, I'd say 1,200 yards is on the table if we're taking him to 130 targets with steady quarterback play. So, but I want you to tell me a little bit about Alec Pierce. Like, what are your thoughts here? Because the projections really kind of tell 2 different stories, and the historical usage tells a different story than what we're looking at on paper.
Yeah, he has the biggest projection discrepancy on the team. Dynasty wide receiver 31, pick 98, best ball round 6.6. Came into 2025 with one of the most historically efficient catch to receiving yard seasons that we've seen. Basically, Deshaun Jackson-esque at 84 targets, 47 catches, 1,000 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And we have his projections at 115 targets, 68 catches, 1,020 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So let me get this straight. It's 31 more targets and only 20 more yards. I mean, that's the confusing thing about it. But when I look at this, what I really see is us assuming an increase in efficiency. I think he could have a very similar year to last year while still having more targets sent his way, continuing to have a very low efficiency, but having more touchdowns and more yards than Mike Clay has him at.
I 1,000% agree with this. There's a couple people that come to mind when it comes to something like this. Allen Robinson in 2015 in Jacksonville is the one that immediately comes to mind, like an 80 for 1,400 yard, 80 for 14 and 14. He's big. He's 6'4". He's 210 pounds. He can fly, and he's incredible at the catch point in terms of contested catches. And you've seen his skill evolve over time. So they paid him 4 years, $114 million, I believe $80 million guaranteed. It's the largest actual free agent contract a receiver had signed at the time. So I'm very, very intrigued by this. But why don't we go to Josh Downs? Because this is the most interesting thing. It's a contract year for him, and we can, in PPR, he could have some utility, but I don't know what to do with him from a dynasty perspective. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Alec Pierce, or excuse me, Josh Downs, and what his outlook is for you this year?
Yeah, let me tell you about Josh Pierce and Alec Downs. Josh Downs is the Dynasty wide receiver 42, pick 124, best ball round 10.9, pretty far behind Alec Pierce, if you're asking me. And in 2025, we had 58 or 88 targets for 58 catches, 566 and 4 touchdowns, basically unusable most of the time on your roster. In 2026, we have him at 105 targets, 717 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I take offense to these projections in all aspects, because the thing that we saw was Michael Pittman leaving the team and a plethora of targets opening up in the short and intermediate area of the field. The deep area of the field is still occupied by Alec Pierce. The short and intermediate area is fully occupied by Tyler Warren and Josh Downs. I expected to see his projection closer to the 8 to 900 range and 5 to 6 touchdowns, pretty close to what I'd expect from Alec Pierce. I think Josh Downs is going to have weekly usability, and Pierce is going to be more of a spike week play. But I think both are adequate options for your fantasy team.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Downs is more of a dynasty play because if he goes somewhere else and he gets a commensurate amount of money to be a wide receiver 2 of some sort, then I think that his utility increases. But he's just kind of sandwiched between guys who make big plays, giant tight end targets who command volume, and that just leaves you in a place where you're basically, poor, deaf, dumb, and blind man's Zay Flowers in this offense. So just to go over the brief handcuffs real quick, DJ Giddens, Seth McGowan, those are basically the only people worth mentioning. We could talk about Nick Westbrook-Akine, who scored 8 touchdowns on 20 receptions. That's still wild. But this offense remains extremely concentrated.
Oh, yeah. It's what Shane Steichen offenses tend to be. They tend to go through and have an established wide receiver 1 and 2 that the ball is getting thrown to, and a running back that is a huge part of that offense.
Yeah. And so this is where it gets really interesting because they project to be an elite rushing team with top half passing volume and concentrated fantasy production. So there's just so much to love here. I think that, the wide receiver 1 usage, the tight end 1 usage, we've already just sung the praises of Alec Pierce and Jonathan Taylor and Tyler Warren. So we don't have to spend too much time talking about these guys. But to close us out here, what's your overall outlook on the Colts in 2025? Who are the biggest buys, and who are you most excited about, and who are you looking to buy at cost?
This offense is an interesting one because it doesn't create 5 or 6 options in your fantasy draft. It doesn't create a significant amount of usable pieces that you wouldn't expect later in drafts, but it creates 3 or 4 really good options. My favorite value is probably Daniel Jones or Joshua Downs. I think both of those players are going way below where I'd expect them to be at ADP, especially with Daniel Jones at QB 24. There's a good option that, especially in a best ball draft, that he could be providing you with top 12 value as early as week 2 or 3 in the NFL season. And safest pick, obviously, Jonathan Taylor. The offense still runs through him, but past that, I would say Alec Pierce does give you some spike week value. He is going all the way up at wide receiver 24. That is a bit rich for a player that I think is going to have some weekly inconsistency.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, it's Tyler Warren. We've seen the elite vault. Like, there were only two tight ends last year to get more than 115 targets. I think that Tyler Warren very easily could ascend into that tier with Kyle Pitts and Trey McBride and Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers would have, obviously, if he didn't get hurt. So I think this is the best combination of baked in floor with a massive unforeseen ceiling. So why don't you close us out, Addi, and let us know what we need to do next.
The Colts might not have the flashiest offense in fantasy, but they have the flashiest offense in our hearts. And they're one of the easiest ones to predict.
What just happened?
Well, it's outro time, so I have to go off the cuff. It's the exact type of offense we want to invest in. And let us know in the comments which Colts player you're most invested in. Until next time, we'll see you in Chev Hollow.
What just happened?
I started reading the... I'm Ron Burgundy.
So, anyway, teleprompter issues aside, hey, as I always leave you, there's ball watchers and ball knowers. We'll see you in the next team preview.